I'm Nikki and welcome to the Preppy Possum. Today I'm going to lead you step by step through a painting. All right, let's paint the cross. So let's start by grabbing a huge brush. So I grab like a number 1, and I'm going to do the sky first. So I'm going to do some light blue, but I mean you could do dark, sunset, whatever. I'm just going to make it kind of light blue. So I'm going to grab a bunch of light blue, and I'm going to do like a bumpy line to kind of be where the sky touches the grass. Then I'm going to jump up. I'm going to make it kind of hilly, so I'm going to jump up about halfway. And then once you get that, grab a bunch of blue and just fill in all above it. Mine's looking a little dark just because I know it's going to dry darker, so I might grab a little bit of white with it. I might have to lighten it up even more if it dries dark. But just grab a lot of paint and go for it. Because we can always come back and kind of thicken it up around our cross. All right, we got us a good start on our background. And then once you have that, just kind of wipe off your extra a little, and let's grab some greens. So some dark green and slimy green together probably. Or actually I might grab a little bit more dark just because I'll probably come back and lighten it up on top. And I'm just gonna fill in the whole bottom part of our canvas because that's gonna kind of be our hillside. And don't worry if this is a little streaky too. I have a chunk. Because we're gonna come back and throw a little bit more paint on there. I'm just gonna take it all the way up next to the green. Don't worry if like some kind of mixes in, because we'll do them both. That's a good start. So then let's go ahead and wipe that one off and chunk it in the water. And let's let it dry for just a second before we add our cross on there. Let's go ahead now and throw the start of our cross on there. I'm gonna start with probably like a number 6, but you could use a number 4 too. I'm just crazy and we'll start with a little bit bigger. And I'm gonna let mine lean a little bit just because I like that. So let's see, we want kind of a big cross. So I guess I'm probably gonna stop it all the way up here. So just a few inches, like an inch and a half or something from the top, 2 inches from the top. And take it all the way to your grass. Which I know I'm probably gonna get this like too thick on here, but we can always come back and slim it up, trim it up through places. right, I'm trying to see if that's thick enough. I could always add a little bit to the side, but I would just make the top a little jagged, which you could go like more or less than me, but a little jagged. And then, you know, it wouldn't even have to be like straight on both sides. It could be a little jagged there, but I'm just gonna try to do it, and then we can always skinny it up if we need it. But that's a good start to our one little part. And then now we're gonna do the little border cross. So I'm probably gonna do it just like a third of the way down. So probably like right here or so. And it's gonna lean a little bit too, since our cross is leaning. And then I would make the edges of these boards a little jagged too. And I'm trying to make sure I brought it over enough. Yeah, I think that's a good start maybe. Might make this board come out a little bit further. All right, so we got our board started. Then let's wipe that one off and chunk it. And let's thicken up the bottom a little bit. So our grass, give that a second to dry. So I'm gonna grab like a number 8 and dry it off. And I'm gonna grab more of the really light green this time. And I'm gonna throw some really light kind of towards the tops. Kind of like where the sun would hit. All right, so we have the top of it started. Now let's grab kind of the 2 greens together. And I'm gonna grab some really dark green actually and throw some of that at the bottom first. Throw in paint again, but just to kind of get it darkened up. And hopefully it's gonna dry a little darker than it goes on too, so. Hopefully it'll be like really dark at the bottom. That'll kind of make the light, the top part of the heel pop a little bit better. And then once I've kind of darkened it at the bottom, I'll kind of use the 2, like a dark green and light green, and kind of blend it where we threw some light on the top. And we're probably gonna have to come back and hit it even another time, but at least we're kind of thickening it up. Getting our hillside looking a little bit better here. Alrighty. I'm gonna grab a little bit more green. Okie dokie. So we have a start on our greens. So let's go ahead and wipe that one off. and chunk it. And I might actually, I'm gonna grab that same size brush, just like a clean one, so like a number 8, and grab more light blue with even a little white. And I'm just gonna throw another layer on my background, just without getting right up next to the cross or the heel. So kind of just through all the big areas to get it thickened up. It's okay if it's a little streaky too. All right, so we got that thickened. So let's go ahead and wipe that one off and chunk it in the water, and we're gonna let it dry for just a second. Now, let's get our cross looking a little bit better. So I'm gonna grab like a number 4 and dry it off. And let's grab some really light brown. So I'm gonna use like some off-white and caramel together. And I'm gonna really streak up my boards. And don't worry if you get too heavy with this, because we're just gonna come back and keep streaking with dark colors too. The more streaks you put, the better. But you just kind of want to skip around with your streaking. So make sure you get some like near the edges, near the top and the bottom, so it's not like you're just streaking through the middle. You want to be an all over streaker. So I'm just using a lot of paint on my brush and then just being kind of light with it. Because we'll come back and throw, even more on this. Let's see, that's a pretty good start to our streaking. Now let's go ahead and streak up the other board. So like up here at the top, I'll just kind of throw like a little bit on the edge and then just kind of streak down from that. And then just kind of skip around. And throw some streaks down here too. All right, now I'm gonna grab some of the kind of like a milk chocolate and dark brown together, and I'm gonna skip through and throw a few of those streaks kind of back into it. And even though we're streaking right now, we're gonna have to come back and still streak some more. But the key is you want some really light areas and really dark areas without it looking like too planned. Because it kind of has to be like more random looking for it to look natural. So, if you kind of perfectly place them, the wood probably wouldn't look like that. So you just want some lights and some darks. And then right underneath where the board hits, actually and above it, I would even grab a tiny bit of black with the dark brown, because that's going to be a little bit of a shadow like casted on the wood. So it's going to be a little bit darker above and below it. So grab just a little bit more of the dark. But don't worry, if you get too dark, you can always come and streak back over. I'm going to throw a few really dark streaks through a couple other sections on my board too. Which I might even have to come back with a number 1, really small, to get some good little streaks. All right, so that's a good start to our streaking. We'll let it dry for just a minute. Let's kind of wipe that one off, and let's grab some dark purple with a little bit of black. And now we're gonna do like a droopy line for the start of our cloth. So we're gonna just let it droop, and I would let it hang down below where your cross hits. So you still wanna see a little bit of the blue kinda right underneath the cross there. And then I'm going to take it all the way over, kind of let it lean over here. And then I'm just going to do like a couple little humps, because it's going to go on the top of that. And then I'm just going to let it, will kind of droop right here. Like it's going to sag more in the middle because of like how it hangs. So you can go ahead and skip down at least like 1.5 inches and then just let it connect with the top, because it's going to get a little bit skinnier at the top. So if you've ever done like draped a cloth or curtains, it's kind of the same. Then I'm going to do a couple bumps at that top, and then leave it a little bit skinnier at the top, and then just connect it to that droop. So now we have the start of our cloth, and then go ahead and grab more of that purple and black and just kind of fill it in, just to get a layer of paint on that. Because since I'm painting with acrylics, you can work dark to light. If it was oils, it'd probably be easier to do the other way. And then once you have the droop, then we're gonna skip on the underside of our cross. So like this will be the back side of where it hangs. And we're gonna do like that little part of our cloth. So I'm gonna let it shoot out a little. And then I'm gonna skip down. We just kind of want it to have like where it's hanging, to have an uneven hang, just kind of to make it look more natural once again. Let's see, let's go ahead and curve that out. So I kind of have it end in some points, like the fabric kind of is draped over. And then I'm going to do the same kind of thing over here. So it's going to be draped over and hanging over on the edge. So I'm going to let it curve out. And then I'm going to skip in and have this curve too. And then once you have both of your little drape sections, which don't worry if you got crazy, you can always let it dry and cover it. But I'm just gonna grab more of the dark purple and black and just kind of fill it in to get a layer on there. Start on our cloth. Let's go ahead now and wipe that one off and chunk it. And while we're letting that dry for a second, I'm just gonna go ahead and throw just a little bit more green on our hillside, because then we can probably like get that looking good. So I'm gonna grab like a number 8 again and some slimy limey and throw a little bit more of that slimy limey towards the top, because as you can see, like it dries darker than it goes on. So just to kind of thicken it up anywhere where it looked thin, the more paint you put on there, the better, really. So I just wanted some like really light spots. Okay, so now that we have that lightened up, I'm gonna grab the 2 greens together . And just kind of streak some of that in there. And you can kind of eat away at that light green. We'll kind of blend it. And then grab some really dark green again. Maybe even with a tiny bit of black if you still need to get darker. And we're just gonna chunk some of that like through the bottom. Trying to get it good and streaky, but not too streaky, if that makes sense. And then just anywhere where your paint looks thin, we're just trying to thicken that up a little bit. Dark got a little too dark in a few little areas. Okay, so we have our hillside thickened up. We probably don't have to hit the green again on that, so that's good. And we'll dry that brush off and chunk it. And now let's go ahead and grab like a clean like number 4 and dry it off, and grab some of that really light purple. So a real light purple. You can even have a little bit of white or light blue with it. And now we're gonna add the start of our little drape. So let's start right here through the bottom, because that's gonna be like kind of pronounced. So, but I'm gonna start with that big whoop. Then once I get that, then I'm gonna add a few more little droops. And then I'm even gonna add some little parts of droops right here. And I'm probably gonna come back, add more dark and light, but this is just gonna kind of give us a start. And then we're gonna do the same thing through the little parts that hang down behind it. So I'm gonna start by adding like a little part where it's draped right there. I'm just kind of adding the light edges, and then we can come back and hit the light and dark again. And then it's kind of draped again. You just kind of want to show some folds. So now we about have a first layer of lights and darks. So let's just let that dry for just a second. That way we can come back and add another layer. Let's get our boards looking better. So I'm gonna grab a teeny tiny brush now, so like a number 1. That way I can do some tiny little streaks. And I'm gonna grab some off-white and caramel just to get some real light streaks through our wood. And just kind of load your brush and be really light with it. And we're just gonna kind of add some streaks. But don't worry if you get too heavy-handed, you can always come back and streak into them. And I'm kind of saying that for myself, because I have a tendency to get a little heavy-handed. But I'm just gonna kind of throw, mine needed some more light. So even though these I'm throwing on are gonna dry a little bit darker, hopefully I'm lightening it up a little bit. And same thing with this part. It definitely needs a few more light streaks. Then I'm even gonna grab a little bit of dark. I kind of got it too light right there, and kind of blend it in a few places where the light touches the dark. And add maybe a few dark slivers back in there. Just because you want some really light lights and some really dark darks to kind of give it the contrast. It'll look like the creases, the crevices in the wood. All right, and then I'm gonna add just a few more darks down here too. All right, then I'm gonna wipe that one off and chunk it. I'm gonna grab a little bit bigger brush, even though you could have stayed with a number 1 because I'm gonna work on the drape, but I'm gonna probably grab like a number 4 and grab some more of that light purple, and I'm just gonna hit my little drape sections again. Actually, I'm gonna grab some light purple and dark purple together so I don't get too light. And even though I'm hitting these right now, I'm gonna have to hit the dark again too, because you can see it's really thin. I'm just gonna do the same thing through like my little drape sections. I'm just gonna lighten up where we had the lights. Because of course now it's like dried a little bit, it's a little darker. It's kind of everywhere where you have those folds, the top of the folds kind of. Because then we'll come back in and throw some more dark on there here in a smidge. Which I probably should have used a tiny brush for some of this, but I'll use it in a second. All right, so now we got some more lights on there. So let's wipe that off a little bit and let's grab some more of that dark purple and black. And let's kind of thicken up some of the really dark parts, because then we can come back in and kind of blend with the two purples. So this is like the shadow where all the folds are. So just our little shadows, which I might have to grab a little bit smaller brush to hit some of them. I'm gonna go ahead and wipe it off and grab a number 1, so teeny tiny, and the same dark purple and black, and I'm just gonna hit, so it's like all the shadow parts. Trying to make sure I get some dark thrown in here, because then we can let it dry for just a second and come back and blend it in a little bit. This kind of too perfect up here, but we'll come back and mess it up. All right, that's a good start to the dark. So let's wipe that one off and chunk it. I'm gonna go ahead and use actually that same tiny brush and go ahead and work on my flowers and give that a second to dry. So that teeny tiny brush, so number 1, and I'm gonna grab kind of the 2 greens together, and we're gonna skip around and do some little clusters on the hillside. So load your brush with a lot of paint and just be really light with it. And we're gonna skip around and just kind of come up with your stroke. That way the thinnest part of your stroke is towards the top. But make sure I'm gonna have like some at the bottom of the cross. All right, and then once we have that, then just kind of wipe off your extra and rinse that one out and dry it off. And I would still use a number 1. And I'm gonna grab some bright white, but you could do whatever color, like purple flowers would look good, or blue. But I'm gonna use a little bit of white, and I'm just gonna barely touch. So you just kind of want them to barely show up, because especially right here, when we throw the flowers over the green, they're gonna really jump out at you if you get too heavy. So I'm just kind of barely touching the canvas. And then I'm gonna do that same thing through all of my little clusters. But like I said, against that green, it's really gonna pop out. So just, I know I usually say grab a ton of paint, but for this part, you could have like way less paint on your brush. So you can kind of wipe off the extra on the edge of your palette. All right, and then once we have our flowers on there, actually I think our drapery still needs to dry for just a little second. So go ahead and we'll let that, wipe off your extra and chunk it in the water. We'll let that dry for just a minute. So I'm gonna grab like a number 4 size brush again and dry it off, and grab some more like light purple and dark purple together. And I'm just gonna hit like our little drape sections again, because now that we've thrown in some dark, we can kind of hit our lights again to make them pop. The key is we just didn't want any thin areas. They might need to get their brakes looked at. I'm not even good with that kind of thing, and that's pretty loud. So I'm just kind of like lightening up the edges. So everywhere we're like that outermost part of the fold. So, because you want to have the lights and the darks to make it pop. And now we'll throw just a few lights over here through this side. And it just helps to kind of like make crisp lines so it'll kind of look more like a fold. Which, as I said that, I didn't get very crisp of a line, but you can always kind of play around with it. I think we lightened it up enough. And then now I'm going to grab a little bit of dark purple, and in just a few places I'm going to put a little dark where the light touches the really dark to kind of blend it a little bit. But really we don't need too much of that. Just in a few places. I think we probably got enough dark in there. And throw just a little bit of light through that bottom fold, just because I had a little bit of dark peeking out there. All right, I think that's pretty good. Okay, let's see if that lightened it up enough. All right, so you could lighten it up a little bit, but I think it looks pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and sign this puppy. So use a teeny tiny brush. And now we have our cross. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Be sure to check us out. We're on Cox Street in Asheboro. And be sure to check out our website, www.thepreppypossum.com.